Fake naturals are ruining fitness, not just for me, but for all the bros and hoes busting their ass in the gym every day. You know, we look up to these people. They're basically selling us a lie. Doesn't matter what social media platform it is, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, doesn't matter. But nowadays I'm seeing in my feeds anyway, just a ton of people obviously on gear, but claiming natty status. Back in the day, it used to be mostly guys that were on gear, but nowadays we're seeing more females on gear. So, I mean, I don't know, I think it sort of taints the whole industry in a poor light. You know, as a guy, I can get discouraged too. I mean, I see women benching 3 plates. I'm like, what? You know, that's, I don't know. I don't think they're natural. Anyway, today I want to talk about, these fake influencers that are, sorry, I should say fake natties who are influencers. You know, I don't have a problem with people taking gear per se. I think that's a decision that you have to make. There's obviously going to be negative consequences to that. A lot of health consequences that you might want to look into before you start taking some pills or, injecting. But these days, a lot of people are taking stuff. More and more people are open about it. More and more we see, just shredded, huge, veins popping, insane lifts, whether that's in the gym or even these calisthenics guys. A lot of them I would say are questionable just as much as the gym bros. So these guys that can do, one arm planches, one arm levers and stuff like that. I mean, I guess it's possible that some of these guys are fully natural. They're shredded to the bone, not any flaw on their body anywhere. For me as a natural lifter, I still carry body fat on me. Like, I can get lean in my face. Obviously, that's the first place I lose fat. I get lean in the arms and the legs. But then love handles is for me, it's like the last spot that I just can't lose the fat that easily. So that's one way to sort of spot a natural lifter is, they might have some areas of their body that are looking good, shredded, huge, whatever. But then they might just have like a little bit of fat somewhere on their body. But these guys that are just huge and just shredded to the bone, I don't know, looks to me a bit questionable. So one of the first lies that they often talk about is these quick results. I live in Japan, so some of the influencers I follow are Japanese, and these guys get ready for shows. They claim they're natural, these natural bodybuilding shows, and they go from kind of fluffy 1 week to literally 2 weeks later, stage ready. And, this is while maintaining their muscle mass. Like, if you starved yourself for 2 weeks, yeah, you could drop, down and look pretty good, but, you're gonna look a bit flat and deflated. But these guys actually, they put on muscle. And, I'm like, I don't know. I don't like what it does to especially younger people who may not be able to realize that these guys are obviously taking stuff and they're just not being honest about it. So I don't know. I just don't like the way the whole thing's going. The second thing I want to talk about is in regards to like these cheat meals and binging and cheat days and just eating a ton of calories. So again, I watch, I like to watch these things, but I realize who they are and what they're doing. I still watch it, I take it with a grain of salt, but some people may think that that's acceptable, to, have cheat days like twice a week or have a cheat meal here and there. And, they're shredded to the bone. It doesn't make any sense at all. They can consume like 5,000 calories per day and still maintain like sub 8% body fat. It's totally insane. Like, you look at these thumbnails of these guys, they're flexing their guns and they have like 20 cheeseburgers, pizzas, and milkshakes or whatever in front of them. I just take one look at those thumbnails and I'm like, okay, I might watch part of the video just to see how much they eat. It's entertainment, but I'm like, as a natural lifter and somebody who, is trying to stay lean and look good, I can't do these massive cheat meals. It would sabotage my diet completely. Once in a while I do high calorie days, I do low calorie days. So on my off days, I dial my calories down a little bit lower, usually by cutting carbs, keep my protein the same. And then on my workout days, I double my carbs for my lunch and my dinner, that type of thing. But some of these influencers, they're just eating like almost whatever they want. I'm not going to drop names. If you're, on the internet, you probably have seen some guys who just, they seem to eat whatever they want and just stay shredded to the bone all the time, stay huge, super strong. It doesn't add up. Obviously, some of them are pretty upfront about their steroid use. So, I mean, good for them. I'm glad that people are at least being honest and saying, I'm on stuff, which I think is important for people to say. On the other hand, I feel like, performance enhancing drugs have become a little bit normalized. Anyway, you got to do what you got to do. If that's what you want to do, fantastic. I just think that there's too many health risks associated with it. But I mean, these people have built their livelihoods off of it. So, I mean, once you get a body like that, basically you could eat almost whatever you want and stay huge and shredded. You can sell supplements and sell workout programs and make a livelihood off of that and your social media, whether that's YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is. So basically, you take a pill or you pin yourself a little bit here and there, and it covers everything for you. So I see the attraction. I see the attraction for sure. Like, again, not dropping names, but people, millionaires now, living the life. It also gets you, the partner that you want. So, I'm obviously selling it pretty well here, but I'm not trying to sell it. So I think that, just hop on, YouTube, for example, you're going to see a lot of people coming out with, admissions of, side effects of what things have done to them. Even if we look at, Ronnie Coleman, what's happening to him right now.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Ron here. And man, let me tell you, these past few weeks have been some of the toughest of my life. Your boy was hit with sepsis.
I want to say it's due to the steroids. He was also lifting like a maniac. I have a huge respect for Big Ron. But he didn't hide anything. He was fully upfront. Professional bodybuilder, come on gear, and he did what he had to do, and he was the king, right? He was the king for 8 years, so I think it was. So, good for him for doing what he was doing. But a lot of these influencers these days, especially these younger ones in their 20s, just these overnight transformations, claiming that it was just hard work and diet. Maybe genetics or whatever. I don't buy it at all. I don't buy it at all, and I think it's harming, like I said before, the young men and women who are, trying to get to their goals. So, anyway, this is just, I'm kind of ranting a little bit, but this is just, kind of letting, especially the younger guys know that, there are options for you if you want to go that route, and, you may be able to build yourself a livelihood out of it. Get the wife, get the girl that you want, and there's a lot of benefits, but the risks are also there. So you got to be very mindful of what you might do to your body. And I'm not going to go into all the side effects because there's lots of other channels that do that. One more thing I want to talk about is I think the definition of what is natty has, I don't know if it's shifted or if it's just always been blurred, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like people think that if it's not a steroid, then they're natural. And so there's a bunch of compounds which are not steroids, but give you steroid-like effects and side effects. So they can claim natty status or steroid-free or whatever, but to me, that's not natty, not the same thing. So anyway, I do feel like the line is blurred a little bit, and people are trying to get away with claiming, natty, but they're on compounds which are, very questionable and, harmful and very effective. So strength, size, shredded. So to me, that's not a true natural, and, these people are lying to you, and, I think they just come right out and say, whether they're doing stuff or not. There's channels like Greg Doucette who tries to call people out, but I actually think that he's not always right, or I'm not gonna say he's not always right, but I think that I feel like he may actually be hiding some people's some people's not natty status because they're sponsored by his supplement company and that type of thing. So, I'm glad that he does call out the people who he does call out, but I think he's a little bit, what can I say, like over generous with who he puts into the natty category. And so anyway, the back guy also calls people out. There's a few channels that are calling out these fake natties, which I think is important to do. But I wish they would just come right out and say, this is what I'm taking. These are the potential side effects of taking it. I'm willing to take that risk. You should be aware of these risks if you want to follow in my footsteps. And I think that would be like the most honest thing to do, because, it's kind of, I would put it almost like it's medical information. I know YouTube, is maybe not the best place to get medical information, but we're watching, these types of health and fitness videos all the time. At least, us in the, the fitness and workout and bodybuilding space. So where does it cross over into medical information? I don't know. But I mean, there's medical information out there, but I guess the onus is on you. That's why I'm making this video, to sort of let you know that, it may take you a while to get to your goals, but doing it the natural way is probably going to be better off in the long run. You just have to do a search for a few people. Skywalker is one. What happened to these people who went off gear and they lost all their gains and they got into drugs, and it seems like there was like some sort of a chemical imbalance or something like that. Why else would they be so addicted to not only the gear, but alcohol, drugs, women? It's just an addictive personality that they have, and they amass huge followings, and I don't know. I just think it's harmful. Anyway, that's why I'm making this video. I think, the information, it's out there, but it's sort of clouded in, fancy Instagram pictures and, nice lighting, and people get sort of swayed by these amazing looking influencers. So I'm calling them out in this video. So how can you spot these fake natties? There's a few telltale signs. So not an ounce of fat anywhere on their body. Like most naturals will have, like I said before, will have a deposit somewhere if it's lower abs or obliques, maybe a little bit in the chest, or you know what I mean? Like there's those areas that tend to hang on to body fat if you're natural, unless you've, dieted yourself down to like skin and bones, and you're losing muscle wasting is happening. In that case, I think it was Nick Strength and Power who, when he dieted down, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Nick Strength and Power, when he did his natural bodybuilding show, he must have been like 180 or something like that when he was bulking, and then when he was on stage, I think he was like 143 or something like that. So he had to lose like about 40 pounds, and he didn't think he would have to lose that much. I think he got down to like 160 and was like, I'm gonna be pretty good for the show, but he just hung on to this body fat that he couldn't lose. He ended up having to, just whittle himself down to, a very scrawny but aesthetic, right? He looked good in the pics that I saw at 143 or 140 something, but I mean, that's sort of the extent of what has to be done if you're a natural lifter or a natural competitor. But on gear, he probably could have dropped like, I don't know, less than half of that, maybe like 10-15 pounds, and inflated his muscle with glycogen stores, so he would have been nice and full yet shredded at a much heavier weight. So that's the difference. That's the difference. So it takes time. It can be very discouraging for natural lifters. It's hard to make gains. It takes months. It might even take years for some people. Whereas guys on subs can do things literally in weeks. If you don't have the patience these days with TikTok brain, people are losing patience. They want instant results, and the results are there, but I think the risks are, this is my opinion, I don't think the risks are worth it. I've never dabbled in these sort of supplements, But just from what I've seen online, people coming out with shutting down, right? When the male body stops producing testosterone. So that's one of the risks with steroids anyway. I'm not an expert in this stuff. I don't know if you can get the same sort of shutdown with other PEDs, but you know, I've watched videos, I've read articles about guys who, you know, whatever. I mean, they have a long-term partner and they can't sort of satisfy their partner anymore. Permanent TRT. So that's another thing. These guys who get this blood work done, they're like, oh, you know, I've got low T. You know, I'm going on TRT. What they don't tell you is they were probably on gear or something, some PEDs beforehand. Their natural testosterone dropped. So now they're saying, oh look, I have low T, so I've got to go on TRT. But in actual fact, they've been on gear for a while. Body's testosterone production drops, and now they need to, most of the time they don't maintain it, probably bump it up a little bit so that they're a little bit higher. You know who these guys are. Well, that's about it for this video, guys. Lots of information out there. I just think it's important to talk about these things because, you know, with the glorification of, you know, perfect bodies everywhere these days, you know, especially in the fitness space, I think it's important to discuss these things and let people know that the natural route is very, very effective. It does take patience, it takes time, it takes a lot of effort, you know, hard work in the gym, dieting, and just back and forth, bulking and cutting, and you know, it's a lot of work. But I think it's worth it because you can be healthy and, you know, have kids in the future, have a partner who loves you and who you can satisfy, and without worry of, you know, any of these insane side effects, some of which could actually be death. Again, I'm not gonna say names, but there have been certainly a number of popular strength coaches who have passed away. And so these are all risks. But anyway, I mean, if that's the risk that you're willing to take, then you know, take that risk. But I'm just here to talk about these risks are there, and I don't think you need to do it. Stay natural is what I have to say for that. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this video. That's it for today, and we'll check in the next one. If you haven't already, subscribe, and I'm going to be launching some new shirts, so I'll probably leave a link down below. Anyway, peace.